Good morning. It's time for another edition of Our Town here on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. My name is Darren Swinson. Our Town, as always, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust. Our guest on the program this morning, a little later on, we will have a conversation with Decorah School Superintendent Tim Cronin. We'll also talk to Decorah City Manager Travis Goedken. We'll kick off the program this morning by talking to Jessica Rilling with the Decorah Area Chamber of Commerce. Lots of things going on. You got sales tax free weekend coming up in August. You got the Nordic Fest coming up next week. A couple of other things going on. And this Saturday, you got Ridiculous Days in Decorah. All of that part of the busyness, which is the chamber office, really all times a year. And this time of year, we'll start the conversation with Jessica right now. She will be our leadoff batter on Our Town. It's brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust, and you're listening to it on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. Always a busy time at the Decorah Area Chamber of Commerce, and this time of year, probably one of the busiest for the Decorah Area Chamber of Commerce, chatting with Jessica Rilling, the executive director of the organization. And Jessica, many things to touch on this morning, including this Saturday, the annual Ridiculous Day. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so this is a great long-standing tradition for Decorah, and there'll be more than 20 stores that are celebrating ridiculous days with ridiculous sales. So I think a lot of the residents really enjoy this Saturday to come out and find good deals. It's also a really nice time to walk in the downtown and just be reminded that we're lucky to have women's clothing stores, a really nice men's clothing store, and just really all the things that you would hope to go shopping for, you can do, and you can walk to all of them. That being said, there are some stores that aren't in the downtown that also lean into the ridiculous sales. So Market 52 up on Highway 52 does their biggest sale, and that starts today, Thursday. But yeah, this is a lot of great stuff, really a lot of good product that, the seasons change, and so this is your time to snag a lot of good sales.
Will there be some street closures down on Water Street to allow some of the downtown merchants to put some of their merchandise out on the street?
Yeah, the Water Street's going to be closed. And then we're also hoping, not all the businesses are within the street closure that are participating, but we have some big like feather flags to kind of help encourage folks to go to those other blocks as well.
And one of the things going on this week in Decorah, you've got a production crew from a television show in town. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we've been in communication with John McGivern's Main Street program. This is out of Wisconsin. And they're here, they're filming. We greeted their crew earlier this week, and they are going to a variety of places. This program really likes to have a big scope of locations. So they like to get to a manufacturer, they'll get up to Luther, and then hit on some different businesses and food choices. So it's been a whirlwind of a week, but we're thrilled to have them. The episode itself, so Decorah will have an episode in this show. The episode will run in season 3, and we don't know exactly when yet. But this is when they get all their stories and their footage. So yesterday they shot their B-roll, just nice views of the town, and they'll do interviews, and it's a really nice program. So if folks haven't watched any of them, I would encourage them to do so. They've done other Iowa towns, and we're thrilled to be included.
Give us a little bit more on the show itself for those that aren't familiar with the show.
Sure. So John McGivern's is kind of the main personality, and he visits and has a good experience and shares the things he's finding. This is I think he's done things in film for a long time. This is the show's we'll be heading into the 3rd season of it, and I would say he's looking at places in Upper Midwest, and likes to celebrate the unique attractions. He asked us a lot of questions. We provide them a lot of information, and then they kind of decide where they want to do and where they want to go. But they try to find some of that unique stuff to celebrate and focus on. So the second season of the show aired this year on PBS Wisconsin, and you can stream it on the free PBS video app. And season 1 and 2 you can watch on YouTube, so people can find this and watch it. We are excited to be included because we know that Wisconsin's a great market for us. Being in Northeast Iowa, this is a good travel distance. So we love being introduced to people in Wisconsin that maybe haven't heard of Decorah yet, or maybe have heard of us but haven't made it here. So this is really speaking to an audience that are likely visitors.
As for getting Decorah on this show, was it a case of you guys reaching out to them, or did they reach out to you?
We reached out to them. Alyssa Ritter with Visit Decorah sent a kind of that initial inquiry. And one of the things we talk about with tourism work, here in town is that it takes time. So, from that initial inquiry to the show airing will be at least a year and a half. So there's a lot of that happens kind of ahead of the show running. But we're thrilled that the weather is good for them for these days when they're here filming. That's really, we're glad for that.
And yourself, I was very impressed. I believe it was last month. You ran around the city of Decorah, and you put a ribbon pretty much around a lot of the town. I'm impressed with your cardio abilities there. But that was to signify Decorah getting recognized as a new district. I know we've touched on it before, but explain what went on there.
Yeah, so this is a state designation. It's called a cultural and entertainment district. And we're one of 18 communities in Iowa with this recognition, this level of recognition. And the state really talks about it as a feather in the cap for communities that have a really vibrant downtown or core district. So, there's an application process for that. And Decorah and Burlington were the 2 towns selected this year to be added. It's a 10-year designation. So every year the chamber will do a report that talks about all the things we're doing and the things we hope to do. And we get connected to this great group of 17 other towns. It's a way to recognize how safe and walkable and dynamic and really full of entertainment and cultural activities Decorah is. It was fun to work on the application and kind of pull all that together. It's an extraordinary amount of things that are happening in a small space, in a walkable space. And so, the state loved the application. We got a lot of compliments on it. And now we really move into kind of celebration of that and using that designation to our advantage in a lot of ways. So thank you. Yes, my arms were sore. I didn't realize I was, lifting up the ribbon, which doesn't weigh very much for a while. So we had fun.
But if you have to hold your arms in the air for that long.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Fair. Thank you.
So I was very impressed. But obviously the 3 things we've touched on to this point, that's busy enough. If that weren't busy enough, you get a little thing called Nordic Fest next week.
Yeah, so the Chamber, Visitor Center is headquarters. It'll be the 56th annual Nordic Fest. I'm really excited. We're excited for this every year. This is only the 3rd year that the Beverage Garden has been in this great, like, kind of family focused space between the Visitor Center and Vesterheim. The Commons will be open. Kind of do a soft opening, and I know people are thrilled to get in there and see it as a beautiful building. So yeah, this is really that time period this week where we have the merchandise out. People can buy a program now. We're getting just ready for parade, ready for kind of those big showcase events. It promises to be big and beautiful. And for the folks who really like the Nordic dancers, this is, of course, a senior year. So the dancers in the senior group They dance tonight for lawn chair night up at the courthouse. That's their kind of rehearsal for Nordic Fest. And then the Nordic Fest performances are their last ones. So it's always a joy to watch them. I think when we have the year where it's the seniors last year, it feels special and will be extra fun.
And if that weren't enough, first weekend in August is coming up in the not too distant future, and you can shop sales tax free in the state of Iowa. And I'd imagine that's a big weekend for local businesses as we start to look towards back to school. Sorry, kids, it's happening in a month.
Yes. So, I mean, every weekend is a great weekend to buy local. This one is a particularly advantageous if you want to save a little bit of money. And like we talked about before, there's an extraordinary amount available to people in the community of Decorah. So even if it's not where you're buying everything, I think if you can make a point to buy a few things that, you can incorporate into your big list, that really does make a difference for the businesses downtown.
And I've always thought as a border community like Decorah, like the state of Minnesota doesn't have sales tax on clothing. I think that weekend is really big for the local clothing stores, especially. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have really good choices here. I mean, if you haven't been into some of these yet, or if it's been a while, go in. They're wonderful. They do a wonderful job at, managing their inventory. There's new things. If you haven't been into like Double Windsor Men's Clothing Company, get in there. Like on one of these next weekends. It's a really amazing inventory. And so certainly, one pair of nice slacks, can last you for a while. I think it's a good time to get them.
As a guy, it usually lasts you longer than probably it should, but I digress. But anything I feel silly asking this. Anything we're missing, Jessica?
Oh boy, that's a pretty good list, Darren. I mean, I think that hits on the high points, and I think just that reminder that summer goes really fast, and if you haven't made a point to do some of those special things while we have this beautiful weather, make a plan. Put it in your calendar to spend some time out and about enjoying it. We forget how much we have close by, and it's really a lot. So make a point to get out and see it and enjoy it.
Very well stated, Jessica. Always good catching up with you, especially during a busy time of year. We thank you for taking a few moments to talk about all things going on in Decorah, and enjoy the next couple of weeks, and make sure you got coffee available.
We will do that for sure. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Jessica Rilling from the Decorah Area Chamber of Commerce. Been a long time no speak since we've gotten to talk to this guy, Travis Goedken, the city manager of Decorah. And with the 4th of July earlier this month, didn't really have time to talk to him after the initial meeting this month. So we talked to him after the second meeting of this month. And Travis, it was a 15-minute meeting. That's never a bad thing in city government, is it?
It's not, Darren. We got to take them when we can. And, it did get paired with almost 2 hours of committee meeting discussions prior to. So it was a welcome short meeting.
Probably the biggest news since we last talked to you, and new police chief for the city of Decorah. Tell us how that process went.
That's right. So, the city of Decorah, we received 16 applications and had an excellent candidate pool, very deep, and had 3 finalists at the end of the process. And Tricia rose to the top and was sworn in and badge pinning last night on Monday night's meeting. And when this airs, she started on Wednesday, where she will take her first day on the job. So we look forward to, wish Dave Smutzler the best in his retirement, and also look forward to Tricia serving as our police chief and moving forward.
Knowing the fact that recruiting of police officers has been a struggle for many municipalities across the country, the fact that you got 16 people to apply for the police chief job, did that surprise you at all?
It did. Actually, Jeff Kaler, the consultant that we hired to assist in the process, at the initial discussion, he said if we get 8 to 10, he'd be ecstatic. The number of searches that he had performed as of late, single digits for candidates. And so what I think that speaks really highly of Decorah as a community and the city as an organization. And, we've done well here as a community to draw that much interest in that type of position.
And what pleased you the most about the search process? And is there anything that happened during this process that could maybe assist the city in future searches for similar spots?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's just hope, Darren, we don't have any immediate future similar searches. Let's try and keep those to a minimum. But, I will say I was really happy overall with the process. It does take time. This is a very high profile position here for the city. And so it's a decision you want to make right. And so, no, I would say overall process went very well. We brought in a number of partners to help in the interview process to make sure we were getting multiple viewpoints, had a police officer only reception to meet all the candidates. And I think that was actually in addition to what Jeff Kaler usually does as part of his search process, and had very positive feedback on including that as part of the process.
And I think we've touched on this before, but I think it's a good thing to remind people of: a search for a police chief different than a search for other city positions. Remind people how so.
Correct. So with being a police chief, you are a sworn police officer. And so you have to meet the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy minimum standards. And if you don't, you've got a test for those, and you have to have a qualified proctor to administer those tests. And so that was a very large consideration of bringing Jeff Kaler on to help with the search, because I certainly am not certified to administer those tests, and we'd have to have somebody else do it regardless. Bringing Jeff Kaler on board early also helped with that search, that candidate pool, which may have helped result in that 16 candidates.
Looking at some of the action the council took on Monday night, I'll ask you about the combined utilities telecommunication joint meeting with the council that started at 4 o'clock Monday afternoon. You discussed fiber to the premise. Where is that idea at right now?
Mm-hmm. So as an idea, we are, I'm going to put myself out there, bearing any more bumps. So to frame everything up, the city of Decorah, once we implement fiber to the premise, we will be only the second city in the state of Iowa to do this without a municipal electric backing it. The first being Fort Dodge, so population 25,000, a few more resources than Decorah, bigger market pool. They only started serving their first true customers in May. So this is relatively uncharted territory. We're following a path very similar to Fort Dodge. And as an idea, we are about 90 days away from having contracts and having everything packaged up.
And I'm assuming all those contracts would go before the council. Would there be a public hearing process or anything like that? Tell us how that process would go.
Yes, so there is a public hearing process, public bidding process that actually does not go through council. That's a little bit of a misconception here. If you remember, 9 years ago, I believe, when this all started, the city approved by an overwhelming margin to establish a municipal telecom utility. That board is responsible for the public hearings, the contract approvals. And so it's actually that board that will go through all the process.
And how much is this going to cost?
Mm-hmm. The process or getting the whole thing up and running?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So most of the process, since we have not hired an individual that would be responsible for running the telco out of the gate and getting us through this process. Most of the cost is being borne by splitting all that work over existing staff, whether it's myself, Chopper, our IT director, or Carrie, the city clerk. So we're not bearing a lot of costs there. On the legal expense and the financial advisor, Michael Maloney, who participated in Monday night's work session, or excuse me, committee meeting, those are all baked into once we carry forward the actual implementation. And so we're looking at probably around 10 million or so, a little bit higher than that for full implementation.
And is that a general fund expenditure? Is there a levy that gets set? How does the city pay for that?
Negative ghostwriter.
Okay.
The state of Iowa is actually, when it comes to telecommunications, prohibits the use of tax dollars and general fund revenues towards the implementation of a telco. So all of this would be based on future revenues of the system.
So you're borrowing against that future revenues to get it going. Is that a fair way to put it?
Correct. And what makes this even more fun, sarcastic, is along with preventing the use of any general funds, the state of Iowa says you cannot pledge the asset as collateral. So the loan we have to get is uncollateralized and based on future revenues that don't currently exist. So you can understand why this is extremely difficult to get done, get across the finish line. And like I said, we would be the second municipality in the state of Iowa to do it without a municipal electric financially backing it.
Do you see any roadblocks to this happening from this point on?
Oh, I see plenty.
Okay.
There's still at least 3 contracts that we need to get across the finish line that we've been negotiating with partners, whether it's financially for the initial investment, of course, or the loan, if you will, operating contracts, and any one of those could eventually or could possibly fall short, but we got to keep trying.
So if I want to go with an analogy here, would this be a situation where if this was a football game, would you be at maybe the 25-yard line going in, or how would you say that?
Mm-hmm.
You know me, I like my sports analogies.
Well, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. We want to stick with football. Let's say we're on the 5-yard line.
Okay.
We can see it. We're down by 2. But there's 1 second left on the clock. We're kicking a field goal that we, in theory, should be able to hit. But it's windier than all get out. It's pouring rain. It's terrible conditions. So you got to fight through a lot of those things to make you can see it right there. And you are this close, but you still got to take all these other things into consideration. That's the best sports analogy I can put together for it.
Long story longer, so stay tuned, right?
Stay tuned.
Another issue that committee talked about was the Decorah Watershed Protection Plan. There was a presentation about that on Monday night. What's the latest on that front?
Mm-hmm. So the city had worked with numerous partners to discuss our wellhead protection areas where our drinking waters are sourced from. And quite honestly, pretty eye-opening. In most areas in the state of Iowa, including what I was familiar with before, if you have, a contamination or a spill of some sorts, an issue that arises, usually you have years to react to it. The DNR's minimums are based on 2-year, 5-year. But here in Decorah, given our karst terrain and we're talking days. So for 3 of our wells, we would actually have a 10-day response before we could see a potential spill make it into our wells in our drinking water supply. And those would be on the what we would call the west cluster. The north cluster of 3 wells, that's 30 days. And so that was pretty eye-opening. But there will be future discussions with council on the city does have a wellhead protection zone and an ordinance that discusses different hazardous materials and their operation within the area. So we'll have future conversations about that as well.
Another issue, I know it was a quick council meeting, so you got things done pretty quickly on a Monday night. Another issue that's been out there, we haven't discussed it a lot publicly yet, is negotiations between the city and the school district. The school district, obviously, with the eye on a new elementary school, but needs a little bit of cooperation from the city or between the city and the district to make that happen. Where are those discussions at right now?
Yeah, so those conversations are still happening. You're right. They're not necessarily public facing council level discussions at this point. If you remember back when the city and the school district held a joint work session, staff was left with essentially the goal of figuring out tennis courts, softball field locations, and any number of things before the council would be willing to move forward with having the school there. We do believe we've got tennis courts figured out, still working on some softball options out there, but those discussions are happening. Just we're not ready to have those at the council level yet or the school board level.
All right, that's covered everything in my notebook. Is there anything else in your notebook there, Travis?
No, Darren, I think we covered pretty well here. We joked about last night's council or the other night's council meeting going 15 minutes, and it's okay to catch a breather every once in a while. Get Travis some time so he can get in, get a haircut and a beard trim.
Well, and I shouldn't really say notebook. It's probably a Word document on your computer nowadays in 2023. I got to get up with times a little bit, don't I?
This is true.
So, Travis, we appreciate the update on what's going on in the city of Decorah, and we look forward to having a conversation with you here in a few weeks when the calendar turns to August. Thanks for the time, as always.
Not a problem.
Travis Goedken, City Manager of Decorah. A conversation with Tim Cronin, the Superintendent of Schools in the Decorah Community School District. I was out last month, the week of the board meeting, so I haven't talked to you for 2 months. Tim, welcome back to the show. I've missed you.
Well, thank you. I've also missed you.
All right. So now that we got the pleasantries out of the way, the school board met earlier this week, and we're talking to you from the Central Administration Office. Is that office going to be changing here in the not too distant future?
Yes, it is. With the purchase of the Voltmer building, and we moved our transportation out there. There's an office space, a larger office space out there, and we kind of tested it out and checked on a few things. Worked with the administrative team on what it would be like if we moved out there, and worked on the central office team on if we did move out there, what's the best time. So we're not necessarily tied to the school year like a school building would be with children starting up. So we have a window of opportunity. About September 16th is when we'll transition from our current space at 510 Winnebago out to the Old Stage Road part. And so we went through that with the board last night, and I know the one thing, we like the space. It's a big space. It'll be good to be in the same building with the bus drivers. It is a little bit farther out. We recognize that, but we think that the pros outweigh the cons on this. So we'll be moving out in September.
Will the school board meetings be held at that location then?
That's where we're planning on. We've got a room out there. It's about the same size as we have now, and it doesn't have, if you've ever been in person to our board meetings, or maybe you've seen it on the OWL camera on YouTube, we have a couple of pillars that run down and they impact our speakers. So we've got a room without any obstructions, and we're planning on having meetings out there, but we wouldn't have one out there, I guess, until October at this point in time.
What will happen to the building that you're sitting in right now?
The current plan is, and I'm going to meet with some folks, but the program that is available to move and could use this space. The most right now would be our homeschool assistance program. And so I think they'd be eager to have the space. They've been at West Side, but with us moving preschool back to West Side, they're getting a little cramped over there. So the plan is to move the homeschool assistance program here to the 510 Winnebago space. We've got to double check a few things on that. And the homeschool program isn't a 5 days a week, 8 days in-person program. So this building will also have an availability to host some smaller teacher meetings before and after school, and maybe even just during school, as well as we'll be able to do that out at the old stage property as well.
What prompted the move other than the just space availability out at that new building?
Yeah, it's mostly space. We've got 6 staff at this building, and really 4 offices. So 2 people share a space, and that's not always the best, especially when you have private conversations, to have another person in the room. And then our IT has been for years in a hallway that we just close both doors of the hallway and call it an office. So space was a huge motivator, and just bigger rooms. Well, everyone will have their own private space, and then we'll still have opportunities for meeting space and like I said, a more conducive boardroom. So I think that'd probably be the biggest selling points on the new space.
How has the transition been moving the bus fleet from its previous location to its new location? And what does that new location allow you to do with your bus fleet that you didn't have the capability to do previously?
Well, the new location is just I don't think I'd be exaggerating. It's enormous. And so it's been wonderful to move out there. We took possession late in May. We got the school year done, and then we just started getting the buses out there. And if you drove by, you'd see maybe 5 buses one day and then 10 the next. The whole fleet's out there. It is kind of amazing to think that as crowded as the bus parking lot is now, that we used to cram all those into the old space back there. What is that? Would that be Pole Line Road, or across the road from Pole Line Road? I mean, it was a nice building. It was real tight, and there wasn't a lot of extra, and we didn't store all our vehicles on site either. So we'll be able to store all the buses and vehicles we want on site. We won't have to farm anything out just because of space needs. Now, there might be a bus driver or two that, if their route is closer to, it's not conducive to drive to Decorah to do a route north of town, they may still keep the bus at their house. But for the most part, we won't have to not have everything on site if we don't want it. But when you talk about what we'll be able to do, we've got a big shop area, much bigger than we've had before. We've got a mechanic that can do a lot of in-house repairs, and now that he's going to have space to do it. So we anticipate doing a lot more repairs in-house. There are certain mechanical things that we can do now that we couldn't do before. We have a larger wash bay, and storage for the fleet, storage for tools, better organization, more space to repair. So the transition's been great for the bus folks. Every time they get more and more organized, and are really, one of the parts is just being better organized. You can find all your stuff and get at tools and projects quicker.
And this obviously has been the biggest transition of the summer, moving your bus fleet out to a new location. What other projects has the district been busy with this summer as you prepare for school here in another month?
Well, we're getting close. We're going to start next week. Probably the other big project is the turf project, the long-awaited turf project at Cary Lee, and the middle school. There's that space out there that it's kind of it's a grass field, but it ends up getting kind of muddy, and the board had been looking to get artificial surface in there. That was bid earlier this spring. We had the winning bidder. think they had until mid-October to complete the project, but they're ready to go now. They're interested in finding a window before school starts. And then I had to say, well, you probably want to go after Nordic Fest. So they're going to start August 1st on that project. So that'll be a big project and 5 to 6 weeks. So it will encroach on the start of the school year, but less encroachment than if they started, August 30th. Outside of then we're doing the transition of preschools moving back to West Side with some, hopefully alleviate some of the space concerns at John Klein. And because preschool had just moved from West Side to John Klein for a year, and now we're moving them back. So there's a lot of work to get West Side organized and ready for preschool to go back in there. And then there's just in general, lots of buildings and grounds upgrades and, or summer painting and stay on top of that stuff.
From a logistical standpoint, from the paperwork, the bureaucracy, the administrative standpoint, I know you took care of a lot of agreements for the upcoming school year. Is there anything left on that agenda as you get ready for school next month?
With regards to agreements that we might be looking to do, we're kind of always looking at, are there opportunities for Decorah? I came from the environment of doing a lot of operational sharing at both my two districts. So if there'd be an operational sharing as the state program where you share one position between two districts, and then that helps reduce the cost for the district, but there's also a financial incentive from the state for different positions shared. So we would be open to that. We've got most of our positions filled. So that's a nice sign. I know we've got some paraeducators to fill, but I think for the most part, we got a lot of our agreements signed. As you noted, got the handbooks all prepared and ready to go. That was maybe something that's a little new to Decorah. In the past, we maybe didn't take those to the board, but that's something that I'm pretty used to having to be a board approved. So they politely say, "Oh, that's one of the new things we do now that Tim's here." So we got our handbooks approved, and kudos to the principals because they had to do a lot of. There's a fair amount of updating you have to do on those to make sure that you are citing the right board policies and stuff. So we'll be ready for that part of the. Not that really makes the start of the school year, but it's just a nice thing to have done.
When it comes to the issue of paraeducators, if anyone out here is wondering what the qualifications, what the job descriptions of those positions would be, and how they can apply if they're interested, how do they go about that?
Well, absolutely. If you're interested in working with children, any experiences that folks have had working in a daycare setting or previous schools or a summer camp are all beneficial. But there's a lot of the ability to work with children is being a nice person and liking children. So if you're interested, you can look at teachiowa.gov is the current website. That'll be transitioning to the as a state dictated. We're going to post everything on Iowa Workforce development page, but that's a little bit cumbersome. So we're sticking with Teach Iowa through this hiring season. They can look online and apply there. There's an online process. If you have any questions, you can always call the central office, and we'll hook you up with directions on that. You can also go to the district webpage, and you can find a link for current openings in the district. We've got that linked right to the website.
I know the board discussed legislative priorities last night as well. What would you like to see done in 6 months when lawmakers get back to work?
Of the 4 items that we kind of identified, 2 kind of fell in the teacher recruitment and retention. So anything the state could do to make that process more effective, obviously funding would help, but there's also funding streams in place that if the state, has talked about for the last 2 years about allowing districts to use part of their management fund for recruitment. management fund traditionally pays for insurance for buildings for the school district, and has funded early retirement incentives. But there's been talk about allowing districts to use management fund to, instead of using that to help people early retire, to encourage people to join the district. If that would go through, or any other opportunities for funding mental health professionals, or any kind of special, if the state could help us compensate teachers by putting more money into the teacher salary supplement, which is a fund that can only be used on teacher salaries and couldn't go to anything else. Those would be all ways that all the districts in the state could directly impact teacher compensation and hopefully recruitment of quality candidates. So I think that would be the big thing. I've probably talked a lot about the teacher shortage in the last 2 years, and it's continues to be a shortage in Iowa. It's not going to change on a dime, but we need to start changing the trajectory a little bit and get more people interested in going into the teaching profession, so that we do have a strong workforce in the future.
I know an issue that has been out there, not a lot public has been said about it recently. There's no secret that you guys would like to build a new elementary school, but there's some things that need to happen before that can come to fruition, or even a plan can come to fruition. Where are those talks at right now? Is there anything you can say publicly at this moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're still pretty eager in building a new school. There's some parts that we're working on. So I'm going to be pretty short on my comments there, not to be rude, but just we're waiting on some pieces to happen, and if and when those could happen, we won't hold back. We'll announce it as soon as possible, because we want to move on from the organizing phase to the planning phase, I guess, where we have identified a space and we start working on what the school could look like. But yeah, we're kind of in a longer holding pattern than I like. I know I'm not the only one just champing at the bit to get a plan out in front of the public. But at this time, that's not much of a comment, so I'll end it there.
Fair enough, but I'd imagine it's one of those situations where you'd rather do it right than do it quickly, correct?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. There's certain parts of this process you can rush, and certain parts that you can't. We're looking to build the best school in the best location we can. Obviously, with the Bolton and Minks work, we've had talks with the city. We continue to have talks with our board. But yeah, we want to get it right. We want to put a plan out that the public feels good about, and with any luck passes for the first time in the referendum process.
Anything we're missing? Anything else on your notepad as we chat here?
Boy, I wouldn't say. I think that was pretty good for a guy who was in Florida last month. He came back firing on all cylinders.
I thank you.
So no, I'm good today. I appreciate your time and getting the word out, and we'll continue to get ready for the start of school year, and I'm sure with any luck, there'll be some announcements about possible new school. Could be any day. Hopefully by the start of school, we'd have a plan in place.
One final question for you. You've been on this job now a little bit over a year. What's been your biggest joy? What's been your biggest surprise as you start your 13th month in charge of the school district?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, and this probably starts, for some people, this is going to sound like a broken record. Back to that teacher recruitment and retention. So we've had a task force of school folks from the Decorah Education Association, as well as administrators, and we sat and we did some work this summer. We're working on finalizing that work, but we feel like we've got some pretty good modifications to make sure that we have a place that people want to come and work and feel valued in. And I appreciated that process. because it was more than just the teacher side saying, oh, we need all these things to be happy. It was really a good discussion and like, how does this work for all of us? So I really appreciate the folks that committed time this summer to do that. And so that's one of my joys. And that ties into when we negotiated teacher salaries this year, we increased the, well, at the time we were calling it the shadow base, but now we call it the recruitment base. So the starting teacher salary, it's set at one number, but then we artificially inflated. And we had artificially inflated it to 36,500 last year. And this year in the process, we got an offer from the teachers union, and from the board side, we actually increased it more than their initial offer, because we saw that was just a way to maybe bring in some young folks. And so I'm getting to a long story to get to a point where I've worked in previous districts where not everybody looks out for the beginning teachers, because among other things, if I'm a veteran teacher and I paid my dues, I want every opportunity for compensation to filter toward my paycheck. And this is the opposite of that. This is specifically, this is helping our district attract younger people or people starting out in the profession by putting money there. And when I get to my joy part is, I've had multiple veteran teachers thank me for doing that, or thank me for being part of that process. And to be honest with you, they're thanking me for helping the city of Decorah and the Decorah school district, but not, it worked against them, but it didn't benefit them. And people should be proud of that. You should be proud that you live in a community where everybody looks out for the district. And these are folks that are probably going to retire in the next couple of years, and they're thanking me for taking care of the school district. So that's a humbling thing. And I know for certain, and I don't need to name the school districts, but I know for certain I've worked in places where that wouldn't have been appreciated by everyone in the district if you'd done that. So that's probably my greatest joy. I forget what the other question was because I've been talking so long. But
biggest surprise.
Biggest surprise. Probably the thing that I don't know, biggest surprise, the thing that just amazes me. And so I was in 2 different districts, and we were maybe the third the size of Decorah for a frame of reference. But the biggest surprise is, well, I knew there'd be activities. I'm just amazed at all the different opportunities that the Decorah students have to participate in, whether it be athletics or fine arts or just activities. And then it's another compliment to the staff, the folks that participate, from the sponsors of those activities and the bus drivers who take kids to those places. I mean, there's times that we send multiple full buses to a cross-country meet, and that's just really neat that we have all those opportunities for our children. So that's been a surprise for me. Not that I didn't think that some of it was going on, but just realizing that any night of the week, if you want to go see a Decorah student perform in something or compete, you can see that.
Tim, we appreciate your time as always. Won't try not to skip a month without giving you a little bit before notice like I did in the month of June, but look forward to chatting with you again here in the month of August. That might be our last conversation in the room you're sitting in, so let's make it a good one next month.
Okay, I'll practice and make better notes for it.
All right, Tim Cronin, Superintendent of Decorah Community Schools, joining us on Our Town. A big manga tuck to those who joined us on the program this morning, including Jessica Rilling from the Decorah Area Chamber of Commerce. Ridiculous Day coming up this Saturday. Got John McGivern's crew in town. Also, you got Nordic Fest next week, sales tax free weekend coming up in August. All sorts of fun stuff going on at the Chamber. Always good to catch up with Decorah City Manager Travis Goedken on what's going on in the city of Decorah. And also, I want to thank Tim Cronin, the Superintendent of the Decorah Community School District, for telling us what's going on with the school district. Don't forget, each and every week we put these shows on YouTube. You're busy. It's summer. kids going this way, kids going that way, you got vacations to go to, you got other stuff going on, you got all these community fairs and festivals going on. Summer's a really fun time, but summer is a time that you're busy and you can't always be near a radio or a streaming device at 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning. We solve that issue for you because we get to talk to interesting people week in and week out. And because of that, we want you to have the ability to talk to those people or hear those conversations, I should say, whenever you want. So we put these shows on YouTube. So if you're out gallivanting on YouTube, looking at whatever you want to watch on YouTube, go 7-20 Our Town program. That's a great way to see what's going on and connect to our show. We also put the links up on all of our LA Communications radio station Facebook pages, including 94.9 and 99.1 The River, Bluff Country 103.5 KNEI, KVIK Classic Hits 104.7, and Hawk Rock 100.5. All of those stations, you can get our link via those Facebook pages, another way we connect with you here at LA Communications. So thanks to our sponsor, Decorah Bank and Trust. A thank you to our guest, and most importantly, we thank you, that's right, you, for tuning in, for logging on, or for watching Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River.